Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the EOF Implementers Call number 13. It looks like we are a little bit low on people today, but let's go ahead and just get started with some client updates. Does anybody want to share what they've been up to in the last couple of weeks? Iman?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Well, from Nethermind side, we kind of implemented the mega EOF spec. We only left out the part where we should introduce a replacement for delegate call and the other stuff. Well, because it's still vague, and yeah, we're still waiting for a clarification about it. And once it's done, we're gonna add it.
Great, thanks for that update. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Dana.
So basically, we implemented tracing based on the immediate arguments. I think we resolved it just after discussion on Discord. That when you're listing immediate arguments, you list all of them, even if it is a giant jump block, because it's still going to be smaller than the memory that you're listing in the trace. So that also, there is a new test case that I think we should put out in the validation that basically was actually failing, but all the fuzzing didn't find. It has to do with a backward step into a conditional jump. It's kind of weird. I'll post it on the Discord. But I think that should be added to people's standard test loops to make sure that they don't get burned by this one. And we haven't done the calls or the creates yet, but we've implemented, I think, most everything else on the spec. I'll go through again. Haven't written tests for them quite yet, but the tracing is correct, so they worked in some cases, but we haven't proven them all out or done extensive testing otherwise. But I think I'm going to be putting the EOF on the shelf for a little bit while I get things ready for Cancun.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that update. And we'll be on the lookout for that bug that you mentioned on Discord or something. Andre, do you happen to have any updates on EVM1? Can anybody hear Andre? If your mic is going, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, hear you now.
Yeah, we don't have much because many people are on holidays, but we did implement data opcodes, and grade 3 is still in progress. We're doing some fixes there and adding unit tests. And there was EMC release for Shanghai, and EVM1 release will be coming soon. But that's not directly related to EOF. I think that's it.
Okay, nice. Thanks a lot. Any client updates I missed? Okay, cool. Compiler updates. Anyone talk to the compiler teams recently? Okay, no worries. Spec updates. Any topics to discuss regarding the specification? Yeah, I mean,
It again, there was a discussion in Discord about the call X opcode, the replacements for those delegate call and static call and call, and I want to know what's the idea about it. Is it gonna be added, or it was just an ephemeral discussion?
So when I first saw the call X option, we only had the 3 calls we were getting rid of call code, but we had call, delegate call, and static call. So the idea was to take 3 opcodes, put them into one opcode with an immediate, and we put all the things into the immediate argument. to say what kind of a call it is. So all calls, I mean, I think all clients filter all their calls opcodes to the same section of code anyway. They just come up with different flags. So we move those flags into the immediate. So that's where it came from. But the complexity grows when you consider things. If you do the pure flag approach, you get combinations even with just those 3 arguments that didn't exist before. You could do a delegate static call in case that makes a difference, which it probably shouldn't, because if it's a static call, you can't. Well, actually, it's pure call. You can't read. You can't write, but you might, static state queries might be interesting. Just that a space that's not available. But then when you add other things, like if we want to add non-contextual, like what 4337 needs to run its gas pricing through the entry points when it asks a contractor if it wants to pay for gas for this, you're not supposed to use things like the block height and the gas price to figure out if it's acceptable. So you're supposed to take all block context out of it. So we can add a flag for that, and that provides growth for those calls like that without growing other operations. The downside is we've gone from 4 possible combinations of the flags to 8 possible combinations of the flags. If we add in a no context flag, we got 3 bits we got to work through. So instead of testing 4 opcodes, we're now testing 8 opcodes. And it could go up if we add another flag, we got to test 16. Or we need to add in logic that says only these combinations of flags are acceptable. All others are going to result in an exceptional halt when executed, until suddenly we decide that they are valid and they don't generate an exceptional halt. So set them on a call, please. So that's the issue there. With going with call X is it provides a potential explosion. While we're saving opcode space, we're significantly increasing the testing surface or the exception surface. So that's my thought. I could go either way on it. I just think the worst thing we can do is to override the F-series calls and give them new operations with less arguments in case we decide we're wrong on gas observability and need to restore those. So I'm either a new series of 3 call operations that take less gas, or the one with the flags. Well, the other problem with the flag is then we have the value variance. There's some that pass the value and some that don't. So we'd have multiple call depths. Call takes the value argument, static and delegate don't. So I think the call X was an interesting idea, but I think the realities of all of the possible implementations make it less palatable. So I'm personally in favor of 3 new opcodes. But if there's support behind call X, I'd totally be behind it. But I don't, I think the 3 new opcodes is the most sensible path to victory.
So that means you're kind of against ROPX?
I wouldn't say I'm against it.
Or sorry, I said ROP, I
opcodes,
meant call X.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm against it. I think the 3 calls is the better solution. But if, it's my number 2 option. So
Okay.
if people want it, I'd go for it. I wouldn't fight it at all. But I think in a vacuum, I would pick the 3 new operations option.
I hate to see anything that increases the exception surface. We're trying to reduce it, not increase it.
Increasing the exceptions in which case?
You've got parameters to call X. Dano just explained.
Yeah, so like the call X, where if we would reduce to say instead of these 8 combinations, you can only do these 4 combinations.
Yeah.
If you pass in the 4 combinations, you don't approve, we throw an exception, which basically turns it into an extended 2-byte opcode anyway. There's new ways to fail. And really, we should fail those at validation, not at runtime.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super involved in this conversation, but I do like the idea of having some more flexibility with things. But yeah, the flags sound a bit complicated, a bit more than we necessarily need. I do like the idea of having the ability to have a static call but not access environmental variables. So I think that's a pretty important thing that we should consider. But yeah, I guess whether or not we do it with the call X or not, I don't really have I don't fall in any direction.
Because I mean, with the no context calls, you might want it static, you might want it non-static. I could see people who want, you know, no context calls, where they could still write to their state values. All those, you know, because state would be static. So I can see there's some argument there. So it opens up new
Right.
possibilities.
That's
So
true.
if we did do callx, we would have to put validation rules that say only this set of immediate arguments is acceptable. But then you have the issue of the stack height changes, but depending upon the number of arguments, depending upon the immediate argument. But then, you know, we're just getting into what other CPU systems do, where you do call, you just go into a different, you functionally go into a different operation plane, and you have an entirely, you know, new set of 256 opcodes in the call is one way to look at it.
Right.
Yeah, this would be the only opcode that takes a variable number of arguments.
I think there is.
There's other ones.
Is there?
RJump.
Yeah, jump V. I think takes a
Yeah.
variable.
It does. It's a jump table.
No, I don't mean immediate.
That's
I mean
immediate.
on the stack.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, again, when we think about it, we are not having an opcode with an immediate. We are having a multi-byte opcode. So they are different opcodes. So each one of them has a specific number of items in the stack. It just seems like it has a variable number in the stack. At least that's how I see it, or how I understand it.
What other
And we would just-
multi-byte opcodes do we have?
None.
So we're introducing a whole new concept just to spare some opcodes.
I think we'll get there. I don't think we're there yet.
I guess, well, either ways, I think this is just the suggestions that, I forgot the name of the guy who said it, sorry. The having two new opcodes seems logical if we are not expecting if we are not expected to add extra limitations or contexts for the opcodes. At least that's how I understand it. If we are gonna add a lot of other contexts, probably call X would make sense. But if we are only gonna have replacements for call and delegate call and static call, then having two new opcodes is better. Keeping the old opcodes with different behaviors sounds like the worst option. So yeah, that's my take on it.
So one thing that crossed my mind, if we do need that new context-free call, you could still stack them and still get the same effect as the call with both flags flipped. You would do a static call into a redirect method that would then do a context-free call. So now in your frame, you'd have both flags set that it can't do static and it can't access context variables. So the frame could have the flags, and you just stack your restrictions. So you could even, well, delegate would be the one complication, because you could combine a delegate with a static and a delegate with a context free, which, no, you just have to do the delegate last. So yeah. I think we can, if those are needed spaces, I think there's solutions. I'm not certain those are needed spaces yet. So yeah, I think everyone here is mostly agreeing with the three new opcodes. What are the numbers? E0, E1, E2, C, D, E, Bs.
Yeah, I need to pull up the list of opcodes.
The E block is empty. Because I'll be honest, I could see people wanting these gas-free calls in legacy.
Yeah. Yeah, the E block
Most-
looks pretty good. Although there are still quite a few in the F block that's available.
We could do F block as well. Is there space for 3 more?
Yeah, it looks like F6, 7, 8.
Let's do F6, 7, 8.
Yeah, that's probably nice. Okay, let's tentatively say those 3 new opcodes. Does that sound good, everyone?
And then what's the order? Call, delegate call, static call?
Yeah, that looks good.
And then it leaves F8, F9, F. Why was F8 picked for static call?
That's a good question. Yeah, I was just looking at that.
214. Because 9 would be call with a separate with a binary. Yeah, F9 is just so random. I mean, F8 is so random. Let's go 6, 7, 8. Call, delegate call, static call. And with what, call 2, delegate call 2, static call 2?
There's also create 3, create 4, and return contract that should be close in the F range, I guess, too.
I think we should have those in the E range because the E range or the B range. The B range seems to be composed of entirely EOF related calls. Let me go back to my switch back to UEM. So if we have a block that is for EOF only, I would want it to go if those are EOF only codes. Where's my branches? EOF. Let's see. B0, B1, B2, or call return call F, return F, jump F. What were 3 and 4? Those I don't have on here. B5 is dupe in, B6 is swap in, 7, 8, 9A is data load. I'm looking on the wrong branch. I had B3 and B4 down before. Make EOFs back. Were there's T store? Or B3 and B4 T store in T load?
Yeah, B3, B4 is T store, T load, T store.
Okay. So we got some non-EOF stuff leaking in.
We can still change it.
I think we should pitch it. I mean, everyone's got the T store implemented, but it's once we get the reference specs, everyone will get it right. If we were to move it out of B, where would we move it?
Yeah, that's true.
Because the 5s are full, The 4s are context ones, basically. 3s are full. 2 is crypto, 1 is math, 0 is math. Then let's see, 6 and 7 are push. 8 is dupe, 9 is swap. A is log. Hmm. 6, 7. So create 3 is 6 and 7.
Those are empty.
No, create 3 is tagged at F6 and create 4 is tagged at F7. 8, 9B. 8 is call. 9 is delegate call. And B is static call. So the call 2s follow the original calls, which is kind of cute.
That is nice.
Should we do that?
That sounds good to me.
And it leaves FC open for, I don't know what, some future thing.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that. Anything else on these opcodes? Okay, cool. Other spec questions? Updates?
We should probably discuss this when Epsilon comes out, but I wonder if we should get some project plan and deadlines in mind. Not deadlines, but like shipping goals for milestones. For people who weren't paying attention, this got moved out of Cancun last Thursday. And I would want it to be in the best place to say this is the headliner for Prague. And
Right.
I think the best way to do that is to have it basically ready to go while Cancun is moving through the testnet cycle. So we can come and say, hey, it's ready, it's tested, it's here. So when the discussion starts up, we can say EOF is ready to ship. We've worked with people, we've got the compilers working, we've got the test cases. So we can go and we can see who else wants to go on this tour with us. So, but I don't know, I don't know how easy that's going to be, what the other roadblocks are, what other teams' appetite for work is. But that way we could do Prague as ideally a Q1 mainnet ship in 24.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. Seems pretty attainable given that we're still, I don't know, 4 or 5 months out at least from 4.4.4. Probably
Right, because
more.
we're looking at Q3 or Q4 for Cancun.
Like right on the edge. Maybe
Okay.
probably more likely to push into Q4 at this rate.
So we'll start the testnet cycle like probably September, October.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking right now.
Okay.
Definitely not earlier than that.
That gives us the summer to finalize it, and then we can start the testnet cycle in January for Prague if things go well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Other spec things? How about testing updates?
We've merged several PRs in the consensus tests, and those are all EOF according to December spec, and it's targeted at Cancun. So this is still going to change. at some point soon. And yeah, no tests yet for all the megaspec new stuff.
Great. Anything else on testing, guys?
Not from my side. We still focusing on 404. But I have the question regarding this. How do you guys see the finalized version of the spec? Yeah, in general, is this still a long way to go, or how do you guys see this getting finalized?
So we need to have a spec written for the new gas recall operations. What else? What were the other holes? There's a couple of other holes. I think the create 3 and create 4 need a spec written. And the data opcode. So we've got 3 more EIPs we need to write. And I think the rest of them look like they have EIPs published for them on the Mega EOF specification. Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. And the whole writing the EIPs, we just need to get a volunteer and start writing it, I guess.
Yeah. So I'd say like it's still another couple months out from finalizing the spec, all the spec things.
Yeah, sorry, and it was just simply a question of just to get a sense of how final the tests, can be with the current state of the spec. Just to avoid many rewrites from the testing part. Yeah. But
Unless we rewrite the container code again, which I hope we don't, you're probably safe writing tests for the ones that we have EIPs for. I don't see those changing too much. Code validation, static relative jumps, functions, static validation, jump F instruction, and unlimited swap and dupe. I really don't see those changing. So those are probably good ones to start working on until we get specs nailed down for grade 3, 4, call 2 series and data. Yeah, you probably should not write tests for those quite yet, unless you enjoy rewriting tests.
Ivan?
Since we mentioned change and stuff like this, I have a question since I'm new here. How do we get notified with spec changes? Is there some hook, or we should just, or do we do it manually? Just keep refreshing GitHub or the EIP page every time? Seems counterproductive, to be honest.
Yeah, it's probably not the best. I think this call is probably the fastest way to know about spec changes that are the EVM channel. But it's a little bit harder with so many EAPs. Usually it's a little bit easier to follow because you have one EIP, you can sort of keep an eye on it, maybe. Whereas this, you really need to have, a call or someone posting on the EVM Discord, like, hey, these things are changing about the spec. It might be nice to have like revisions of the spec. Like right now we're kind of basing things off of this HackMD in some ways.
Does HackMD allow us to see the changes that happen? Because sometimes I assume that we are up to spec and suddenly I notice something different.
Yeah, there is a way. I'm trying to look at it right now. How do you do this? I think if you click the 3 dots in the top right, it shows versions and GitHub sync. I think that you can, like this, I'm looking at a note that I own. I think you can do this on anyone's note, but it will show all the edits to the node. And so if you wanted to take a look and see like what's been modified maybe since you last looked, that would probably be a good way to do it on HackMD.
Okay, thanks. I guess that's it. I was hoping there would be some bot somewhere that you can subscribe to VIPs, but sadly, it's not here. Thanks for your answer.
Yeah, it's not the greatest, but it's all that we have. Hello, Axic. We're kind of wrapping up here. We've gone through the sections. Are there any things that you want to share? Client updates, compiler updates, spec updates?
Yeah, I think there's no real update regarding EOF. We did start to at least implement mcopy, which is, I guess, not strictly related to EOF. But since EOF will not be in Cancun, and mcopy was milestone on the last call, we did a bit of work on implementing it and creating tests. And then regarding the EOF, I think there's two relevant discussions to be had, given the, I guess, the Cancun approved or CFI'd or whatever EIPs. The first discussion is actually the opcode numbers, because now there seems to be like quite a bit of overlap between all these proposed opcodes and also like the EOF opcodes. So maybe there needs to be a proper discussion in allocating these numbers. And on the channel, we did had a number of discussions. Maybe we should just put all the EOF related opcodes in the E0 EF range, and that would free up, some of the like the 0x range and all that. And the second discussion is, with the SSZ transaction format, and like for transaction formats in general, I think it would be useful to get a confirmation on at least the design direction of the UF, with the the contract blobs or init code blobs on transactions. And if there's a confirmation on that, then it would be nice to get at least that field into the transaction format for SSD transactions, for transactions, whatever it's going to be. But I think it would make sense to get that into Cancun and then roll out the rest of the EOF afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Right now there's kind of a debate with the 444 transactions, like are they actually going to be SSD or not? Yeah, so we have that whole debate raging. And then
yeah, well, whether it's SSD or not, there needs to be a new transaction format for 444. And in order to not keep adding new transaction formats, we could just add in it.
Right. Yeah, let's try and figure that out and talk to the 4844 implementer some. And then about the opcodes, we spent some time talking about how to lay out the opcodes. We were mainly talking about these three call opcodes though. So I don't know if we also wanted those in the E range or if we wanted to keep them in the, the F range. Yeah, so we were thinking about putting these three gasless call opcodes at F. Did we say 6, 7, 8?
It was like 8, 9, B.
Oh, 8, 9, B.
Because 6 and 7 are create 3 and create 4. So 8 would be call, 9 would be delegate call. A is already static call, so B would be the new static call.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the rationales for that, Alex wasn't here for this, was that legacy could use these gasless calls. There's nothing tying it to EOF. It's not like it's a series of immediate args. So I do like the idea of like rehoming all the EOF stuff into the E series that takes immediate args. And we'd have to move, like we were thinking of doing the B series, but T-store took a couple spots in the B. But if we make start going backwards from F, the E series gets all the EOF calls that require immediate arguments. I think that would be some nice design setup.
Yeah, I guess you're correct. The call opcodes, they're actually not strictly related to EOF. We could just add them anyway. With
And
semantics.
the gas golfers will love it because you go from 6 stack items to 2 or 3 stack items. They'll be all over it.
Okay, I know. I mean, I will listen to the recording. But when I jumped in, there was like a argument how good the HackMD is to follow changes. And I know that I proposed that we're just gonna keep working the HackMDs until there's like a really strict need for the EIPs. But maybe this is the point with the call opcodes. Maybe we should indeed create like an EIP for them. If nobody else is volunteering, I volunteer to do that this week.
Okay, cool. That would be great.
And then I think the only remaining instructions which don't have an EIP are the data instructions and the creation. So create, free, for, and return contract. But at least it reduces the amount a bit.
Sounds good. Any other final comments?
Is my audio working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. I just had a super quick question. I'm sorry I'm late to this call. Apologies if it was already
All
in a
good.
topic of conversation, but high level question, is there conversation amongst like various EVM compatible rollups around also adopting the EOF format, or like how do those things typically work?
Right now, the conversation seems to mostly be that they don't have the bandwidth to adopt EOF on their own or to spend time organizing amongst themselves. And so they're waiting for either things to settle down in their world, which from the estimates I've heard is like on the order of like 2 or 3 years, to where they can start thinking about not to being 100% EVM compatible and start to like maybe create some like standard around an L2 EVM format, or we just ship it on mainnet L1 and they are forced to adopt to stay quote unquote EVM equivalent.
Okay. Does it sound like that's the more likely option if there's not the latter is the more likely option if there's not the bandwidth in the near term to do more custom roll-up client work around this, or am I misunderstanding?
I didn't quite catch that question.
Like, does it sound like the likely outcome? I don't know. The probabilistic outcome here is that like they get forced to adopting it to maintain EVM compatibility, because like veering from EVM compatibility in the near term is less likely because it requires more bandwidth on their side, or is the outcome the opposite?
I mean, I think that they'll adopt it if L1 adopts it, because L1 is a really strong shelling point. And if you don't have that L1 shelling point, then it becomes very difficult for all of the rollups to make a decision on the exact spec that they're all going to target.
Yep.
And having the bandwidth to do that is difficult. And I think right now, like, if you just look at optimistic rollups, not all of them even really support fraud proofs. So they're kind of like more focused on supporting fraud proofs before they're focused on adding more features to their EVM.
Yeah.
But if Ethereum ships it and it's like in the clients, it's a lot less work for them. They don't need to figure out the exact spec because the core developers already did. It's already implemented. It's easier for them to support.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate the context there.
Also, since some of the L2 structures are using execution engine for some of their block production, aside from the fraud proofs, they almost get it for free.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks for joining. Yeah, if there's nothing else, then we can close about 18 minutes early. Okay, let's close. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you again in 2 weeks. We'll be on the lookout for more communication on Discord in the meantime. Cheers.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.